Hey everyone, in this video we are going to look at a technique that has several different applications. It can be used for, say, an HP or MP gauge. It can be used for a skill check or quick time event gauge to show completion. It can be used for, say, a cooldown to indicate how much longer a skill has before it cools down. What all these have in common, you have an image and you are displaying only a percent of the image, and that percent that is being displayed is either based on time or based on input or based on some other kind of value. So first thing we need to do to make this work, we have to use the UI layer. So even if you're in a 2D environment, you need the UI layer, which means that this would work in 2D or 3D because the UI is the same in either environment. So if you go up to Game Object, you go to UI, and then what's going to happen is when you create the first object, it will create a canvas and an event handler. So we go to UI, and let's just choose image. So you can see canvas, event system. So we're just going to click on that image, and then we'll zoom out a little bit. So let's take our circle. These three images were drawn in an external paint program. Doesn't matter what you use. So we'll just take this. So with the object selected, you can see there is an image, and that is a component, and it has a source image. So you could just take this, put it there, and now that's the image. Now, the reason why I'm using white is because if you start with a white image, that allows you to be able to dynamically change the color based on the value associated with this image. In other words, if you are full health, you can make this green. If you're half health, for example, you could make it yellow. Maybe at a third you want to turn orange and then red. Well, you can't do that effectively if you start with a color. So you start with white and then you can change it to whatever color you want. The way you change the color to begin with is right here. So immediately under source image, in the image component, you have color. If you click here, you get a color picker, and you can just choose, say, green. Now what you would do, and we'll get to this in a few minutes, when the game is running, when your application is running, you would have a script attached to this that would change this attribute. So it's not like you have to keep coming back here to change this. It would be done via a script. So we'll leave it for green for now. And the actual image really doesn't matter. Like if we go to Game Object, UI, and again, they have to be UI objects, and we create another image. We can take this image, put it there, and in this case, it keeps the same because it's just a box. And we can make this rectangular. So let's see, let's double its width, but reduce its height. So that kind of looks like an HP bar, a little small. There we go. And again, you can color this if you want to. Another example for, let's use another square for one more. So we'll go to Game Object, again UI, again image, again we'll use the box. And this one we'll leave like this. This one would be for the skill check. So I'm going to do two things. First, I'm going to show you how to show only a percentage of this. In other words, you want only 10% or 20% or 50%. You want the gauge to slide based on some value. And then the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to highlight just a portion of the gauge. So think about a fighting game. When you get hit, what happens? Part of the gauge highlights, and it indicates how much health you just lost. And if it's a combo, then that amount of the gauge gets bigger and bigger and bigger and then disappears. So we're going to look at that partway through the video. So the basic functionality that you're looking at for this, as far as changing the size, in the image component, image type simple. And this is why you have to do this in the UI layer, because if you weren't in the UI layer, this would just be a regular image, not an image script, and you wouldn't have all this functionality. So image type, you would come down here and you go to filled. And now you have several options. Fill method, radial 360. Well, radial really wouldn't work well for this. So if you click on this, you have some options. You have horizontal, you have vertical, radial 90, 180, 360. So you could do horizontal fill, fill origin, so left to right. Well, if it's, say, a fighting game, this one in the upper left corner, you'd probably go right to left. So the left would be the origin. But if you had, let's duplicate this. If you had one over here, this one you'd probably change so that the origin is to the right. And that is, this health bar would go this way, this health bar would go in this way. It's arbitrary, you can do whatever you want, but that tends to be the kind of symmetry you see in games. Okay, so we looked at the basic setting. For this one, it's horizontal. For this one, image type, we would go to, say, filled again, but this one would be radio 360, so that's fine. This one, fill is bottom. There's actually another way that we can do this too, so actually let's copy this one as well. Slide this one over. So radio 360 is okay, but we could also do vertical. So now let's see how this actually looks. So if we come over to this one, see this fill amount? That's the key attribute that you're going to change. That a script will be attached to this object and it will change the fill amount. Watch what happens. It starts at 1 and it scrolls over. So essentially it's a percent. So it's going from 0 to 1, so you can think of that as the decimal version of a percent. So this is 100%, that's 61.1%, so on and so forth. So this isn't expressing an exact number, like if your hit points are 500. It's not going to express 500, it's going to be displayed as a percent of 500. Do you have 100% of 500? Do you have 50% of 500? If we come over here and we do the same thing, we do the fill amount, you can see that this one moves from the left to the right because, again, you changed the fill origin. Now let's look at these. And actually for this one, we're going to take this image instead. So this one you could use this for a health bar. I believe it was Resident Evil 4. You had like a portrait or something in the upper left corner, and then you had this ring around the image, and that was your health. So the radial is just fine, but I believe fill amount we'd want to be at the top. So watch what happens here. Although in the case of Resident Evil, I believe it was the opposite direction. So the setting here, clockwise, you would change it, you would uncheck it, and now it's counterclockwise. And I believe that was how Resident Evil 4 did it, is it filled in a counterclockwise direction. For this one, I'm thinking, again, like a action RPG, and that this would actually fill vertically. So we already have vertical, we have fill origin from the bottom. So for this one, you can see, just like that, it would fill from the top to bottom. So we said 2 health bars, another health bar. This would be yet another health or energy bar. This one you could use for skill checks. Now, not skill checks, excuse me. You would use this one for, back to skill checks for a second, you could use this one for a skill check or a quick time event. Because usually with a quick time event, there's some kind of indicator showing you how close you are to being completed. So it would be the opposite. You would start with it being empty, and the more you hit the button that you're supposed to, this would fill. If you stop hitting the button, this would unfill, that kind of thing. So that could be used for the skill check. This one would be used for the cooldown. So if you think about, you have the image of a skill, but you've got like a gray overlay, and that this would be the overlay indicating whether or not there's still a cooldown. You could use the same kind of vertical approach. So for image type, you could do filled, and you could do, say, vertical, and the fill origin is the bottom. It's just how you would use this, that when you use the skill, this would be at the full 1, and as the cooldown gets closer and closer to being done, you would make this go away. So this would be like a gray overlay, and let's just address that. So color, gray, but you make it translucent. See how it got darker? That's because it's actually, well, I would have to change the order of this. So the order in which this is listed is the order as far as which one is on top. See? So now you can see that it's translucent. So you would use something like this for your cooldown. But again, you use the ability, this would appear in full, and then as the timer ticks down, this would disappear. Now, as far as handling the coding, I'll usually create a GM, a Game Master object, and I'll attach a script which handles HP, meters, UI functionality, and overall game flow. Basically, functionality that's either associated with multiple objects or maybe not one specific object. So, let's go ahead and create the GM object. We'll go to Game Object, Create Empty, and we'll rename this GM. Now, just to be clear, calling this GM means absolutely nothing to Unity. There's nothing special about a GM object. It's basically an empty object. It's letting you, the developer, know what you're using this for. Next, let's actually rename this image HP image so we can differentiate them. Right-click, Create, C#, and let's call this GameFlow because, again, that's what it's going to do. We click on the GM object, we drag and drop, and now we have our GameFlow script attached to the GM object. So now let's open up that script. First, up here, we're going to type in using Unity Engine .ui. Since we're using UI objects, this will give us access to more statements, more commands. Where you see this double / if you are not familiar with coding, that's a remark statement, which means it's not executed. It's purely there for internal documentation. You can delete it. It does nothing. Okay, so now we need to do a couple of things. We need to make a reference to that image object so as that we can make changes to it, because objects aren't automatically aware of each other. You have to create a connection between them. So public image, and we'll call it HP meter. Now for the HP itself, the actual number you're tracking, let's make this a public static. Now for this particular demo, it doesn't have to be static, but typically your player's HP will probably be static. That way you can access it basically anywhere in the application. Any object could make a change to it, you know, like a projectile or a healing spell, whatever. So public static, and we're going to use a float since we're going to use fractions or decimals to be more exact. Public static float, and we'll call this max HP. And this is a good point to note that in most games you really need to track what your max HP is in addition to your current HP. I don't want to get into it here, but just keep in mind that if your HP can go up or down, then obviously you need to track what that maximum amount is so it doesn't go too high. Public static float, and we'll do current HP, and that'll just be 50. That way, when we run this, we don't have to create some kind of collision detection and do any kind of subtraction. We automatically have a difference between the max and the current. So, what we now need to do, we now need one variable that is going to track that difference. So, that one will make, I think that one can actually be private. I don't think we really need that to be public. See if it gives us a problem. But private, and it really doesn't have to be static either, because it's going to be just used internally here. So private static, not static, just private, and also a float, and we'll do HP %. And we'll start it as 1, just so as that we can make sure this calculation is working, because clearly it wouldn't be 1, it'd be 0.5. So now in the update section, so with every frame, we're going to check our HP meter. So HP % is equal to current HP divided by max HP. And that should come out to 0.5. And just to make sure that's working, we'll do debug.log and have it be displayed. So it should say 0.5. Okay, so a couple things. We need to click on our GM object, and so there's the HP meter. And what we need to do, we need to click on the little selector here and choose HP image. Now, did I not save it? Yes, I did. Okay. I didn't think I had for some reason. So anyways, what we want to do now is we'll just run it, and this won't change yet. It's just going to say 0.5 down here. There we go. We know that the initial value is 1, so we know the calculation is working. Now what we do, in the update section, we now add get component. Oops, sorry. We're modifying the image HP object, so we need to do HP meter dot get component image, and then dot fill amount is the attribute we're looking at, and we just set the fill amount to that HP %. Because again, we said that is measured between 0 and 1, so 0.5 is a valid number in between those parameters. So now, if I haven't forgotten anything, that should actually work. That the meter should only be half full, and it should be half full towards the left. Indeed it is. You can see it's much shorter than that one. Now, in your game, what would happen, the current HP would constantly change. So someone heals a character, so they gain health, current HP gets increased, they get hit, current HP decreases, and so that's why you need to constantly recalculate that. And you don't want there to be lag. You don't want people to be wondering what their health is, so you really want this to be updated with every single frame. So let's take a couple minutes to look at how to change color dynamically based, again, on that HP %. So we're going to set up an if statement. So if HP % is less than, say, 0.51, then we want something to happen. Oops, those are meant to be squigglies. Sorry about that. And then what we do, actually, let's just type this from scratch. So HP meter dot get component image. So that's all the same, but now we change color equals new color, and let's make it, say, let's make it red. So 100, so it's RGB. So full red, no green, no blue. And what we'll do, actually, we can leave that. I mean, you probably wouldn't want it to be red at 50% health, but this is just for demonstrative purposes. So this should indeed, so 0.5 is the current value. Well, 0.5 is less than 0.51, so that means it should turn red. Sure enough, it's red. And just to prove that it's not a fluke, we'll change it so it's 0.6. See, no longer red. So what you do is you'd set up a few of these. So if HP percent is less than 0.5, then you'd actually do yellow instead of red. If HP percent is less than 0.3, then maybe it's orange, 0.2. So in other words, you're just having a bunch of these with a decreasing number here and then the corresponding color here. That's all. Now, I'm not going to do this for all these because basically it's the same functionality, because the only difference is, like, say with this one, the fill amount is being, or should I say, the way it's being filled has already been declared. So if you do 0.5, then it will automatically do it this way. There isn't any difference in the coding. So what we are going to do, though, is I said I wanted to demonstrate how you could have like part of this be highlighted to indicate how much damage you just took. So in other words, say you took 10% damage, then that percent would turn white, whatever, and then disappear. There's actually a fairly easy way to do this, because what you can do is, rather than highlighting this, okay, you can put another image behind it of a different color, and then there's a delay. So let's actually do copy, paste, and we'll call this HP image BG for background. We'll click on it, and we'll set it back to white. And now we just have to change the sequence so it's behind that one. Okay? You can see it's behind it. So if I change just the HP image, not the HP image background, so say I was to shrink this a little bit, because it happens in a single frame, it looks like the green has changed color, when in fact you've shrunk this and revealed that. Now, I know I'm pushing it over. You wouldn't push it over, you would just shrink it. So maybe what I should have done is this. So if you shrink it, it looks like you've highlighted it when in fact you have not. So quick, easy cheat. No sense making it more complicated than absolutely necessary. So basically what you do, you change this, the front one, but you create a slight delay, say 1 second, before you change that one. So let's look to see how you would do that. So right now, every single frame, we're checking to see if there's a change in health. So what we would actually do is, rather than checking every single frame, we would check instead only if damage has been taken. Now, it's a little more difficult to do here because no damage is actually taken, but I'll put in a variable that will act as a trigger just to demonstrate that. So we'll make this private string check, or let's do refresh meters. And it starts off as, say, Y for yes. So in your game, you would have some kind of indicator that when the player is either damaged or healed, you would have this. So actually, this should be a, let's make it a public static. Want to be as accurate as possible. So you would have this static string that your player gets hit or healed or whatever. It says, okay, there's been a change to HP. Now refresh the meter. And the reason for that is, when we were doing this, there was no coordination required. Now we need to coordinate the 2 meters. Okay? So refresh meter, yes. So what we would do, IE numerator, and we can call this, Want to avoid using the same verbiage. So we'll call this meters update. And what happens, this all gets taken out of the update section and goes here. Okay. Now let's do yield, return, new, wait 4 seconds. We'll just put in a very small delay here. We'll do like 0.01f. So 0.01, so 1/100th of a second. This all gets executed, okay? Then we'll have a second delay and then have the same thing be done. Well, we won't change the color, but we'll have the size change. So what we'll do there is we need to create a second HP meter. So public image HP, and we'll just call it BG for background. Let's go assign that. So GM object, HP BG, which is this one. So we now do another yield return. And it's arbitrary how long you want the damage indicator to stay there. So let's do, say, like 3/4 of a second. So 0.75. And then we have exactly the same thing done as far as the size, but we do it to this new one. So let's take this. We don't have to do the calculation over and over again. We already have the calculation. And the background doesn't have to change color because it's going to just be the same color, more than likely, like white or whatever. Oops, sorry. Meant to copy that. All right. So let's delete a few of these empty spaces so it doesn't look so messy. And I think we can remark this out. So what this is saying, we now actually have to reference this. So in the update section, we say if refresh meters equals yes, oops, did I lose? I think I lost the squiggly bracket. Yeah, there we go. So if refresh meters equals yes, then start coroutine, which is how we reference the IEnumerator routine. So it's called meters update with parentheses. In fact, let's do that. I only had a 100th of a second delay, but actually let's create like a full 2-second delay that we have a chance for the screen to appear and we can see the change. So normally you're not going to want that much of a delay. This is the delay that you care about. So I believe that should do it. So HP, nope, not HP meter. This should be HP BG. So this changes the green foreground. This one will change the white background. So my apologies that I didn't fix that sooner. So that should do it. Let's save it. So in 2 seconds, this will change. And see how the white was there? Because the player doesn't know that background is there, as far as they can tell, you've just highlighted part of the meter. So it's a great, easy optical illusion. I mean, if you want to try to find a way to dynamically change a percentage of this, knock yourself out. I just can't see any reason why, because that works just as good. And to further the illusion, what you can do is you can create another background. So let's call this HP tray. So it's like a gray background, like a translucent background. So we'll color this gray. And again, the alpha will make it translucent. And that one will stay its same size all the time. See, you have the translucent background. So that easy. It's that easy to have a part of the HP bar seemingly highlighted as damage is taken. It's that easy as creating a delay. And that would work for like the overwhelming majority of games. There's maybe a few edge cases where that might not look right, but I think that would look sufficient for most games. So I think I've accomplished everything that I wanted to do with this. As I mentioned, like with this one, this would be for the cooldown for a skill. So what you would do with this is, rather than doing a fraction or a decimal based on HP, instead what you would do is you would be tracking time. So in other words, what is the total amount of time before the cooldown is done? So say it's a 5-second cooldown. How much time has passed already? That would give you your percent. Okay? And so that's the difference. So you would just need to put in something that tracks time. So that too could be done like in IE numerator, or you could do that using time dot delta time. If you want, I can do a follow-up for this, but I already have other videos that demonstrate like quick time events based on time. So that's already out there if you want to just do a search of the channel. So I think I have accomplished everything that I wanted in this video. I hope that this has been helpful to you. So you've seen some advanced meter techniques. And I think that should about do it. If you have any questions, please put it in the comments section. I'll do my best to answer your question. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.